You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 46. Here's the problem. You're not reaching enough people, or the people you are reaching aren't connecting with your message. We're going to talk about how to better connect with your audience and the people in it on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
I think that we need a name for Red Podcast listeners.
Ooh, like what?
Well, you know how Jesus has Christians.
Okay.
And Entrepreneur on Fire has Fire Nation.
So we need like Red Nation. That sounds communist though.
Yeah, or maybe like Native American. I was thinking either Red Podcast Nation or like Redians.
Redians. There it is.
Redians.
All right. So all you Redians listening in today.
Or since we're from Tennessee, the Redicians.
That's even better. Redicians.
I recently went to Red Podcast Nation because you won't play Words with Friends with me.
Oh.
And I've got my first Red Podcast Nation opponent.
Ooh, who are you playing?
His name is Ty.
Ty. Who's winning with Ty?
We're tied.
You're tied with Ty. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, Ty's good, though. Ty's good. He's giving me a run for my money, unlike you.
Spelling has never been my thing. So Ty, just know David likes to win. I'm just going to say it. I'm putting it out there.
We like a winner here.
We like a winner.
RED stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. Who we for, Laurel?
RED is for speakers. If you're a coach, if you're an author, if you're a blogger, podcaster, if you're trying to get out your message in any way, shape, or form and make lots of money while doing it, that is what we talk about on this podcast 3 times a week.
RED Podcast is for real strategies, not just tricks or trickery. If you want to last in this business, you're in the right place. Laurel, today I want to talk about how to better connect with an audience, building rapport with the people who listen to you, the people that read your blog, the people that come watch you speak.
I think the problem is when you're in this genre, whether you're what we listed before, coach, author, speaker, a lot of people are struggling either with not reaching enough people or the people you are reaching aren't connecting with your message. So if you're having either of those problems, that's what we're going to be discussing today.
You know, the thing I think that separates the guys that really connect from those that don't, that just kind of pound the message into the ground, and that's how they get sales, just sheer brute force. I think it's empathy. I've referred to it before as your most profitable skill. That's easy for a lot of business owners to do in the genres that we mentioned. I think this comes with the territory for a lot of the people that we're talking to here on Red Podcast, the speakers, the bloggers, the writers, the authors, because a lot of us, me and you included, we ended up where we are because we were our audience at one time.
That's the problem when people pick a random niche. I mean, David, you've seen talk out there that's like, oh, just pick a profitable niche in the industry and build a website and a blog around it and sell products. But when you do that, you really don't have the empathy. Like for me and my business, I started Go Fire Yourself because I had quit my day job and gone out on my own as a full-time business owner and wanted to support other people who were doing the same thing. So I had that empathy for them. But if I had picked a random niche like men's health or men's diet pills or something like that, I wouldn't have had any empathy for my customers. So I think empathy is something that's really important and really separates the people who are able to connect with their audience and those who aren't.
And if you don't have it, there is somebody that does within your niche, and that person will kill you.
Yeah, it's like, who wants to get weight loss advice from the girl who's been skinny her whole life?
Right.
Like, nobody's going to connect with
Absolutely.
that. You want to get that weight loss advice from somebody who is 400 pounds and is now 120 pounds.
Right.
And they did it, and they empathize with you and where you're at, and they know your struggles, and they're better able to communicate and connect with you.
Laurel, the first thing that I do when I launch a new project, certainly if I do a brand new book, is get connected in person with the people that the book or the product is for, even if I've been in the niche for a long time. For example, music business, that's what I'm known for, but if I were to do a new musician book, what I would do, even though I don't normally take on one-on-one consultation clients, is I would get a group of those folks together, let's say 10, 15, maybe even up to 20. They would hire me for 1 hour. I would get paid while I'm doing the work, but it would get me really, really clear on what they're going through, what they need from me, or how I can help them. And that's the kind of stuff that even if you're coming from that background like I did, it's easy to get out of it just because you're not working in it on the day-to-day basis. So even if you're in it, it used to be something that you did day in and day out, and you've done it for years, I would suggest doing that.
That's exactly what I did when I first started writing my book. Well, I surveyed people first on my mailing list saying, what do you really want from this book? How can I help you? And then I also talked to people in person. So I think that's critical. And I also think it's critical. It does help you get empathy for those people and really understand what their struggles are, what they want to hear from you, what content they want you to create. That's great. But it also helps you give them what they actually want and not what you think they want. And we've probably talked about this on the podcast before, but you have to get really clear on what they want. Screw what you think they want. Like those two things are totally different. So talking in person helps you get clear on this.
Yeah, and that's going to make your sales easier.
Oh, exactly. On whatever product you're creating, or if you're just creating content, you're just going to be able to better connect when you know what they actually want.
So when I get somebody on the phone, I'd love to know your thoughts on this, Laurel. It's probably something very, very similar. I say, what are your goals? I ask about the biggest challenges that are holding those people back right now. Like, why aren't you going after your goals like you want to? I ask what would help these people to reach their goals. I want to know what they're currently doing, what's working for them now, and also get into the feeling. This is really what empathy is to me. It's feeling like you are that person. So I ask, what would it feel like for you to achieve that goal? And that's so I can discover why they want it and really get into that mindset so I can help them, once I know why, to actually go after it.
And David, that's great. And I want to repeat that for people, because if you're asking nothing else but these questions to your customers or your potential customers, to the people you're speaking to, you're going to be on the right track. And I'm just going to repeat what you said. First question, what's your goal? What do they want? What do they actually want? Not what do you think they want? So what is your goal? What is the biggest challenge holding you back? What would help you reach that goal? What's working for you now? And what would it feel like to achieve your goal? So just make note of those questions. And when you get on the phone with people, when you survey people, talk about those things.
Once I ask those questions, I sit back and I listen. You know this from your coaching days, Laurel. When you were working as a health coach, that's 90% of it.
Oh, listening is the biggest thing. I mean, in any of this, they always say you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So you have to get really, really good at listening, because people will tell you what they want, but most business owners aren't listening. So that's a key ingredient.
Well, I've talked to people that are getting into the coaching business, and I've always had an issue because I've worked more as, I guess, a consultant. Somebody's coming in and they're looking to get the strategies, let's say. They're looking to get that missing piece of the puzzle. But when you're working in coaching, and I think it applies to this situation, half of your time is spent listening, at least. That's a minimum.
People just want to be heard as well, and that's offering a lot of value. Just listening is how you're connecting with your audience. If you are the ears for them and someone who is going to listen to them and ask them questions, they're going to connect with you right there. I want to point something out about leading people into things as well. And this might go back to asking them questions before you do all the listening that you're going to do. But what you don't want to do is lead people into the answer that you want. And this happened the other day. I was talking to somebody and they had sent out a survey to their audience. And it was about a specific topic that he thought his prospects and his audience needed, but he was really guiding them to answer in a specific way instead of leaving it more open-ended. Instead of asking, what is your goal? What is your challenge? And things like that that let people answer for themselves. He really narrowed it down and he kind of led people to give him the answer that he wanted. And I can't be too specific about this without telling you exactly what he did.
All right, well, let's give some examples then. For example, leading somebody on would be like, wouldn't it be great if for only $20 you could blankety blank?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're already giving them the product. Or wouldn't it be great if, or what if you could do this? Rather than just asking an open-ended, very, very basic question and listening to what comes out of their mouth, because that information for you is going to be a whole lot more valuable.
And the scary part is that they might not answer with what you want them to answer with. And that's why a lot of people kind of lead the questions.
What we're talking about here is empathy. We're talking about you connecting with your clients in a different way, and they will feed to you exactly what they want. And when you come out with that, whether it be via a presentation, a book, a blog post, a sales pitch, they are going to feel like you were talking exactly to them. The purpose of these one-on-one sessions, it is not for you to vet an idea that you already have. It is for you to take your idea and add things to it. It's not for you to discover if the idea is right or not. If you just listen, the idea is going to work. And this is why a lot of ideas don't work. People will tell you, wouldn't it be great if you could do this for $20? People will say, yeah, it would. But until they're actually giving you $20, it doesn't matter. You don't need to listen to them. However, what people say without you leading them on is highly more likely to be responded to in the way that you want it to be.
The key is to listen, to have an open mind, to be flexible. And that's the best way you're going to be able to connect with people and really establish that relationship that you want with them.
So I want to talk about building rapport, because in order to get the information that you're looking for when you're doing these consultations or when you're just hanging out with somebody, you have to have rapport, you have to have trust. They're not going to come to you with their deepest, darkest secrets and what they really, really want without the rapport, without trust. And one of the ways to do that I've found is just finding common ground. And that doesn't have to be one of those business type things. It could simply be, hey, I'm from Nashville too. Oh, really? Where'd you go to high school? A lot of times this is geographically based. Just knowing that you're from the same area, that automatically gives you everything that came with that area as far as common ground.
And this, I would say, this is something to do when you first get on the phone with the person or first email them, if you're doing it that way, is to find that common ground. And you can find it through looking on their website, through looking on their social media pages. What do you have in common with that person? I mean, when I believe I was 16, I got a job in the mall. And the way I got the job over all the other applicants was the manager who was hiring was really into photography. And most of the interview, I just talked to her about photography. And she was so excited to speak to somebody about photography that I ended up getting the job because I had found that common ground with her. It really had nothing to do with my skills or my resume. I'm sure it wasn't any better than any other teenage kid that wanted to work in the mall, but it was finding that common ground that led to the results that I wanted.
I'll give you an example from earlier today. I was reaching out to somebody, went through Facebook to do it, and had noticed that he had attended Full Sail, which probably doesn't mean anything to anybody, but that's why it builds rapport. Full Sail is an audio engineering institute, not a four-year college, but more like a technical school. And because I've worked in the music business for so long, I knew exactly what it was. And that was what I led with. Hey, saw you went to Full Sail. Which campus were you on? Then I asked for what I wanted, and that was that. That's how it started.
I would say finding common ground is a great way to connect with anyone. It doesn't just have to be your audience. It doesn't just have to be whoever. I mean, it's something that you can use in any instance when you're trying to reach out to somebody, when you're trying to talk to an expert, when you're trying to do a podcast interview. Finding that common ground first, I think, is really crucial.
I want to talk about withholding judgment. I think that this is very, very, very difficult to do for a lot of people, especially with Facebook, especially with Twitter. You get on Facebook these days and it's like TMI. You find out all about how somebody's raising their kids. You find out about what they're eating. You find out about their political beliefs. We used to not have that. There were unwritten rules, like never discuss money and politics. You've heard those rules. Or religion. Yet everybody seems to be doing that. I had an interesting thing happen to me a couple of years ago. I was having a lot of work done on my house, and I had a guy come and do some roofing repair for me. And this is the funniest thing, Laurel, because his name was Rick James. So I remember this guy, right? And Rick was a cool guy, and we were joking around. I don't think I mentioned his name to him, but we found out we had some common ground. And I walked him out, and I was having just a great experience. He was there to fix a problem. He did it, and I'd had a lot of roofing problems in this last place. So I was very appreciative of him. And he got in his car, and he drove off, and he was in a pickup truck, and I remember it very, very vividly. He had the back window, I guess it's like a tent or something, but instead of being a clear back window, he had like an American flag on it with an eagle and the Twin Towers burning.
Oh, so it was like a decal?
It was like a decal or something. I don't know what he had done to it. And he had these stickers that were super, super right-wing, which I am not. I mean, this is the kind of thing, if I had pulled up behind this guy, my blood pressure would have been boiling. And I would have been like, oh, that guy, that's the problem with America. Yet I had this incredible experience with him. We did have some common ground. He fixed my problem. I was very appreciative of him. And I actually called him back when I needed some more work done. But it was a real lesson to me. Sometimes because we don't have common ground, or because we see something that we're going to judge, we don't get what we need done. I think combining those two things, finding the common ground and withholding your judgment, are extremely important, because the bottom line is there's a lot of problems to be solved in your business or in your personal life, and a lot of people don't agree with you and they don't share your same values, yet you can still benefit each other.
I'd say don't judge, but also know that not everyone is supposed to be in your audience. So if you're getting negative feedback from people in your audience, you first might want to look at yourself and what you're putting out there, but also maybe they're not meant to be in your audience. Maybe you're not meant to connect with that person. But I think withholding judgment from them, just saying, hey, they're not for me, and that's okay.
If you have questions, you've got comments about what we've talked about, you want to know how to better connect with your audience or the people that you're working with, feel free to reach out to us. We are available at redpodcast.com. There you will find information on how to get to me directly, how to get to Laurel directly. And Twitter is probably the best way. That's definitely the quickest for me. RED, as we mentioned earlier, stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. And something that we are trying to do is build a community of real entrepreneurs, not just people that are looking to make money, but people who are looking to make a career out of this. You can help us to build that community by spreading the word about this podcast. And if you are on iTunes and so inclined, we would appreciate a review. Just go to iTunes Store, search for Red Podcast, and hit review. We appreciate that. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Red Podcast.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.